Regional Vice President with Metro Public Adjustment. Today I want to do some training on the policy coverage review presentation. At Metro, there are really only a couple of skills that you really need to develop. And one of them is you have to be able to tell what a public adjuster does and explain how insurance works, both for the homeowner as well as for the business. Our policy coverage presentation does most of that for us, and all we have to do is basically put it together for the client. So what I want to do is go through the slides that I use and kind of go through some of the key points that I talk about. I am not going to give the presentation as such. I'm only going to be basically talking about the kinds of discussions I do with each of the slides. So initially, when I get started, I want to make sure people understand that this is not something that we're going to try and sell. We're not trying to sell them anything. The policy is something that's been very secretive in the past, in that insurance agents have never explained the policy to their homeowners, and so the homeowners really don't know what they've been buying. Can you imagine for a minute spending $20,000, $40,000 and not really knowing what you bought with that money? And yet that's what our clients have done. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that they understand what the policy is there for, what is its purpose ultimately, and then make sure that they're comfortable with how to use the policy in the future. So one of the things I talk about here specifically is the last item, is how to obtain money for damages. Most people don't understand that insurance is not based, at least home insurance is not based upon what specifically happens in that home, but it's based on what's called the law of large numbers. And the law of large numbers indicates that a premium and the insurance relative to a home is really what's going to be based upon about 10,000 homes. In other words, a tract of homes. So what happens specifically to one home doesn't necessarily indicate that a premium is going to be increased or anything like that. In fact, what we've found is that most people are able to do 2 or 3 claims in a 5-year period of time, and that stays within the realms of averages for the insurers. So the insurance companies don't typically add or subtract to your premium. They typically won't non-renew you when you've had only like 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 claims in a 5-year period of time. So you need to understand that so that you can explain that to your clients, because a lot of them think of this policy in the same way that they thought of their automobile policy, and they're very different, as you can tell. So there are 5 types of insurance that you're going to run across primarily. You're going to run across what are called fire policies. You're going to run across HO3 or special policies. You're going to run across townhouse or condominium policies. You may run up against a renter's policy. And then the last thing that you may run up against is a mobile home or a manufactured home policy. These are all relatively different policies. They have different levels of settlement. In other words, some of them settle at actual cash value, some of them settle at replacement value, but most people don't know what they've got. Now, 90% of the homes that you're going to talk to will have an HO3 or a special policy. In that policy, the home is valued at replacement value, and the personal property is valued at actual cash value, unless somewhere in the policy it states replacement value for the personal property or contents. A lot of people believe that the deductible is an amount that's taken out of their pocket. They actually have to pay it. With home insurance, it's different again than auto insurance. With home insurance, you basically have this amount is deducted from the total amount that the insurance company pays you. So it's an entirely different kind of equation here than it is with an automobile policy. Insurance companies, right here on this slide, I start talking about the fact that the stack is really, it's completely against the homeowner. If you think about it, it's the insurance company you call to identify the damage, and by the way, they have no responsibility to tell the homeowner what needs to be repaired. I think that's incredible, but they don't. And so they have the responsibility of identifying what is going to be repaired, whether or not it's covered in the policy, how much it's valued at, and when it's going to get paid. Now, if you think about that, there's nobody there. There's no question there that's being answered in favor of the client. Everything is there, and it's being done by the insurance company. So because of that, a lot of people get underpaid. They need somebody who's going to be able to stand up for them. And a public adjuster is uniquely identified as someone who can do that. Why? Because we have a combination of interests. One is the policy itself and understanding that. And the second is construction and understanding construction materials and construction costs. And because we have the combination there, we are actually a better advocate in this space than even a lawyer, because a lawyer may know the policy, but they don't know construction. A roofer knows construction, but they don't know the policy, and they don't have the ability to negotiate. The public adjuster has all of that. So through professional representation, that's how we make sure that insurance companies actually treat their clients properly and pay them fairly. And we don't want them to get $1 more than they deserve, but we want them to get every penny that they do deserve. So in this, we start going through the example, and this example is used both in the hiring presentation as well as in the client presentation. So it's a good story to kind of get your arms around and know how to tell. Basically it's a storm, a wind and rain event, blows shingles off the roof, causes damage in the master bedroom. You can see it next to the fan. The water splatters all over the wall-to-wall carpeting in the master bedroom, seeps through it, damages the ceiling down below, and ultimately damages the hardwood floors in the dining room. So what are you going to do if this is your home? Well, you're going to probably clean it up the best you can, and then you're going to call the insurance company. And the insurance company is going to say, here's what you've told us is wrong, and we're going to fix. The roof needs some new shingles put on it, so we'll put 5 or 6 shingles up. The master bedroom, you showed us some damage on the ceiling there, so yeah, we'll fix that up. We'll put some new drywall up there. We'll seal it. We'll paint it. With the carpet, yeah, it was wet, and wet carpet is going to have a smell to it, so we're going to clean it. We're going to dry it. We're going to deodorize it, make sure that it doesn't have any funky smell to it. In the dining room, we'll do the same thing. We'll fix the wall and the ceilings in the same manner. With that one piece of wood that got damaged on the hardwood floor, that we really can't bring in a flooring company for one piece of wood. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a monetary settlement for that damage, and maybe they'll write you a check for it. And then you can either sand and stain it yourself, you can pay somebody to do it, or maybe you buy some carpet and put that over it. But in any of these cases, the insurance company has satisfied the requirement to compensate you for your loss. And so they've met their obligation in their mind. And they're going to write you a check for all of this, minus your deductible, and hand you the check. And then you are responsible to making the repairs and getting the things done. Well, this is not a good settlement. We believe that that a lot of details were left out. We also believe that a lot of things were minimized that need to be addressed properly. So I don't go through all 23 line items. There are a lot of claims reps and managers that do. I don't, just because I think it gets redundant and the point is made after like 3 or 4. So I go through line item 1, I go through line item 2, I go through line items 6 and 7, I go through the line item 11. In that, what I'm doing there is I'm making sure people understand that if I sand and stain one piece of wood, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. And the insurance company in their policy states that they'll bring the house back to pre-loss condition. Pre-loss condition isn't one piece of wood sticking out like a sore thumb. Okay, so the whole thing has to be done. And then I go in and I talk about line item number 16, in that if that floor does continue through into the living room or foyer, then those rooms need to be sanded and stained as well. And then I'll sometimes talk about 21 and 22, in that, if there's debris here, we just aren't going to be able to put that into the trash, and we're not allowed to throw it into the river. So we need to make sure that we have a dumpster available. And you see, these are the details that the insurance company doesn't cover. So these are the things that I want to make sure they understand. We are dotting the I's and crossing the T's. We're making sure the insurance company pays them, and then I move into the next slide, what they should pay them, not what they want to pay them. And I think this slide does a great job of contrasting the difference between what a client thinks is a total settlement and what we know is. Because this is what makes up the next couple of slides. Making sure that we understand this makes up the next couple of slides. Smart Money Magazine, this study, I always go and I talk about the 25 cents. I never mention the 40 cents. They can see that. So I'll mention the 25 cents, and then I'll say that that's 4 times less than they should have received. And the reason I say that is because on the next slide, it only talks about 6 times less, or 574%. 600% is 6 times. Okay, so 574% is almost 6 times the difference between what you get when you deal with a public adjuster and when you try to handle the claim on your own. And if you put this into dollar and cents, like the previous slide, this is 25 cents on the dollar. This one is 17 cents on the dollar. And I always say, the problem is that the homeowner doesn't realize that they're only getting 17 cents because they don't know what the dollar looks like. Remember, and this is where we hearken back to this slide. They only know that the 7 line items were what the insurance company owed them, and they got paid a full dollar of what they should have gotten paid. You see, the difference is that we know that that wasn't even close to being a complete settlement. And that's where the 25 cents and the 17 cents come into play, is that they don't even realize what else should have been covered in the policy or in the settlement. So I hearken back to that just to make sure that people understand that people don't willingly accept 17 cents on the dollar. It's because they don't know that there's 83 cents out there that they should have received. The third service, or the thing that we do here, is we talk about settlements. In other words, our license enables us to reopen a claim up to a year old. And I talk about the church, a windstorm, and that it was denied and that we were able to get them compensated $187,000. Again, you can use as many of these as you want. If you want to have any of these other ones highlighted, I can do that. But I use that one, and then I use the Zhang example. I don't know where Zhang was. I say it's Indiana. A hailstorm, Allstate, $370. $370 basically would account for the aluminum cover around the air conditioning unit. So that's what I talk about. And then the $12,000 is a full roof and gutter replacement in addition. Again, because Allstate goes to the homeowner and says, prove to us that the roof needs to be repaired, who knows how to do that? We'll teach you how to do that, so that you'll know how to identify hail damage on a roof. But a typical homeowner doesn't. And so they're not going to know how to prove that Allstate owes them that $12,000. We can do that for our clients. On this slide, I immediately talk about the 10,000 claims we handle per year and that we have a 99% satisfaction rating. The last thing I'll do is that we handle about, both residential as well as commercial clients. Now I talk about the fact that here's what we look at from an average policy, a normal policy. 90% of homeowners have what's called an all-risk or special policy. And then Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner or Ms. Homeowner, this is probably what you have, and we'll go into your policy specifically once we're done here. But I want to get you an idea of what is covered in your policy. And then I talk about what's covered. And what is covered is 4 words, and write these down. It's physical damage that's sudden and accidental. It's really important that the client understand that, because we really need to make sure that when they speak to us about damage, they speak to us about sudden and accidental damage. So the fire, I talk about the fact that doesn't have to be catastrophic. It can be a stove fire. Same thing with smoke, doesn't have to be catastrophic. Lightning and explosions are both sudden and accidental. Wind, I talk about both direct as well as indirect. The shingles and the siding being blown off, that's direct. The tree being blown into the house, that's indirect. Rain. I talk about the fact that anytime rain enters the home, it has the potential of causing physical damage. Again, I make sure that I use those words because I want to use physical damage and sudden and accidental as many times as I can as I'm going through these different perils. So the roof leak is sudden and accidental. The skylight, accidental is another example, would be leaving a window open when a thunderstorm hits and having all that rain come through the window. That's an accident, and that is covered by your policy. Ice and snow, burglary, hail, tornadoes, hurricanes. Again, you don't have to spend a lot of time on these. This whole presentation should take less than 20 minutes. An accidental discharge of water. That means water that has escaped from the plumbing system. That's what an accidental discharge of water is. So any of these are examples of water that leaves the plumbing system. Theft and vandalism is covered, and especially in the fall I talk about Halloween, and that Halloween vandalism is actually covered in your policy. Floors are a particularly expensive portion of the policy or of your home, and so I like to talk about the fact that this first picture, and this is where I kind of get them to get engaged. I'll ask them, there are 3 ways that hardwood floor is being damaged. Can you name them for me? And most people can come up with one. They'll come up with the fact that there's a liquid, whether they say it's wine or water or whatever, but there's a liquid there and that's going to damage the hardwood. And that's correct. The technical term is decompress. It's going to decompress the wood on the edges where it's not stained. So that's one way. Some people will recognize the fact that the high heels are going to cause damage. They don't know what, but they figure that the high heels are a damage point. And that is correct. The high heels, 10,000 pounds of pressure by an average woman is enough to dent or dimple the hardwood floor. And the first time that happens, that's an insurable loss. The third way is that as that glass hits the floor, it's going to scratch the floor. So scratching of the floor is another form of a sudden and accidental way of damaging the floor. So moving furniture and scratching is another way of accidentally damaging the floor. So those are the 3 ways: the scratching, the dimpling, and the decompression. In the middle is delamination of the carpet Delamination is the process by which the backing is separated from the carpet itself. The water is actually eroding the glue that holds the two together, and that's the delamination. And then there's decompression on the vinyl floor in the third picture, where water's gotten in underneath the vinyl and has lifted it. And all of these require flooring replacements, but they're good claims, and most people would not recognize all of these as being damage. So once we do this, we talk about accidents, because it's a natural to go into after we talk about dropping of something on the floor or an accident of scratching the hardwood floor. Other accidents that can occur in a home is dropping an iron skillet on a kitchen floor, on a ceramic tile and cracking the tile, spilling bleach on the carpet, or leaving the grill too close to the siding when it's still hot and melting the siding. All of these are accidents, and they're covered by the policy. Now that we've kind of gone through the policy and what's in an insurance policy and what it covers, I want to edify Metro in this slide. So I want to talk about the fact that we are not a lightweight or a recent addition to the marketplace. We've been around for 28 years. Public adjusting has been around for over 100 years, by the way, just so that you know. Almost as long as insurance itself. We are one of the only, if not the only, company that operates on a national basis. Steve McCaffrey is a vet, and he's the owner of the company. And we're a founding member of the American Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. And why this is important is because this is an advocacy group, both on a state as well as federal level, that makes sure that insurance companies don't overstep themselves in legislation that would be adverse to our clients. On this slide, I talk about our social responsibility that we do. For every claim that we settle, we send a net to Africa and we plant a tree. We do a golf outing every summer, typically for the Multiple Sclerosis Society. We give money to Operation Enduring Warrior. And then this last one I always talk about, I save it to last, Feeding America. I say if the information that I've provided you is valuable, you may decide that there's some people that you would like to have make sure they know this as well. If you share their names with me and introduce me to them, what we will do is we will feed somebody in this area in your name. And for every person that you introduce me to, we'll feed someone in your name. And so it's a real nice synergy between helping your neighbor, or helping your family member or somebody you know understand their insurance policy, as well as helping me grow my business. In addition to that, you're helping somebody else get fed who would have otherwise gone hungry. And you have that knowledge that you've been able to do that, and you get the tax deduction. So it's a win-win on every level. We've been in business for 28 years. We're licensed, and by the way, we are now licensed in 48 states. Wisconsin recently has become the 48th state, and that was about a year ago. There are 2 states that don't have licensing. One of them is Arkansas, and the other one, I think, is Alaska. We have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau in each of the states and on a federal level. When we help a client, our fee structure is like a lawyer. We charge 35% on a contingency basis, so we don't get paid unless we get our clients paid. And it's 10% on a large loss, typically $100,000 or greater. I said, and then what I'll end up doing is I want to put this 35% in context, because oftentimes people will look at that and say, well, how can I possibly get all the repairs made if I'm only getting if I'm only going to get 65%? So I always want to harken back on the conversation we had with the Smart Money magazine article and with the State of Florida study. Because those studies showed that they only got 17 cents or 25 cents on the dollar. So at 65 cents, they're getting anywhere between 2 to 4 times the compensation they would have received had they tried to handle the claim on their own. And the only thing that we're doing is we're making sure that the full extent of the damage is covered by the insurance company. Not that they have to use all of that money, and that they probably won't, but that the insurance company owes them all of this because of the extent of the damages. And then I always make sure that they understand that we don't take a fee on the deductible as well. At this point, I always ask, have I been able to teach you anything new today? Have you learned anything? Almost always they're going to say, yeah, I learned a lot. Sometimes they're going to say, this was really valuable. I had no idea what I didn't know. So at this point I say, well, do you have anybody that you know of that could benefit from the same kind of conversation? And at that point they may say yes. And they may say, yeah, I've got a couple of people. In fact, my neighbor needs to talk to you. So we'll get those names and numbers at that time. It's a good idea to get them now, just because a lot of people forget that this is part of our service, and they think of the claim resolution as the only service that we're providing. And if we go to that point, then it would be very reasonable for a client to think that they're not going to provide you any referrals until after a claim is settled. Well, that's 3 months later. You need those referrals today. So let's get them today. Let's not wait. So if we can get referrals at this point, that's great. If not, we're going to ask again after we've gone through their policy specifically. So at this point, we've finished up the presentation, and now it's time to go through the exact policy. Now, I'm not going to do that training in this video, but feel free to look at that training as well to go over and understand what a policy has and how we review that for our clients. I hope this has been instructive on how to give the presentation to a client. I will also provide a video with the presentation, but you can also see one on our corporate website on MetCore. It's not the current presentation, but a lot of the information is the same. A lot of the verbiage is the same. So Leah is the presenter in that presentation. Feel free to listen to that and review that while you're looking at your notes from this training. And then I would recommend that you video yourself and try doing the presentation. If you have done 3 or 4 policy reviews and you haven't given the presentation yet, it's really time to do it. Even if you just read the slides initially, it's valuable information, and you are still going to be seen as an expert by the end of the presentation because of the information. The information is just so overwhelming. It's so much more than the client thought they had with the insurance policy. It just is. So I want to thank you. If there's any questions or anything else that you have, I've got my contact information being posted at the end of the presentation. You guys have a great day. Talk to you soon.